Hello from Phoenix, Arizona. It's Kevin Loy, author of the new book, Short Stories and Tall Tales. Also Swan 2-3, you can see in the background. Today I'm going to be reading the last section of this book called the Westerly novella. And here it goes. Chapter 1, Land Ho. The sailor in the crow's nest was excited. He had not seen land for over 3 months. As he yelled to the crew below, they quickly gathered at the starboard bow to see for themselves. At first, it was hard to make out, but in the distance, they saw something that looked like an island. As they drew closer, they could make out a shoreline with scattered beaches, and in the background, they saw what appeared to be an active volcano spewing smoke into the atmosphere. Ship's Captain Ezekiel sat in his cabin. He heard the excitement above and opened his logbook. He meticulously recorded the date and the day's events. June 12, 1675. After more than 3 months, we have finally spotted land in the distance. We still don't know whether any other ships survived the storms. Our celestial charts are useless because we are in uncharted territory. He closed the logbook, put on his hat and uniform jacket, and looked in the mirror. He noticed his beard and hair were starting to show streaks of gray. He was not surprised. At 38, he was one of the youngest ship captains in the fleet, and the journey had taken its toll. The Westerly was his first command. The newly christened ship was heralded as the fleet's fastest. As a result, they were able to outrun the storms that engulfed the rest of the fleet. Ever since then, they have been alone until now. As he made his way to the command deck, he could hear the crew's excitement. However, the more seasoned sailors were less enthusiastic. They knew that spotting land didn't always mean good news. More than half the crew were on their first voyage. For them, the sight of land meant that they were saved. When he reached the command deck and motioned for the crew, he asked them to calm down. Crew members of the Westerly, well done. We've survived the storms and sailed in uncharted territories for over 90 days. Now that we have spotted land, we must be extremely cautious. Lieutenant Christensen, make ready a landing party. Take 6 men with you. We will maneuver as close to shore as possible, and if all goes well, you can depart at first light. Make sure your men are armed. Once you land, search for a safe part of the island. Once you are certain it is safe, send a signal by lighting a fire on the beach. If it is not safe, fire 2 shots in succession, pause, and then a third. Under those circumstances, we will be ready to aid in your escape. As Lieutenant Christensen will be the first to set foot on this uncharted isle, he will also have the honor of having it named Christensen Island. The crew cheered when they heard it would be named after Lieutenant Christensen. He was a very popular and well-respected officer. They sailed around the island and found only one suitable spot for a landing party. The Westerly was limited to several hundred yards from the beach because of rocks and shallow water. As they sailed around it, Lieutenant Christensen drew a crude map of what he saw. It appeared to be no more than 2 miles wide at any point. He would add more details once they were on shore. They dropped anchor as close as possible, and Lieutenant Christensen handpicked his men. All of them were seasoned sailors with experience in landing parties. As the sun set, he went to the captain's chamber to discuss last-minute details. The captain was expecting him and left the door ajar. Enter, Lieutenant Christensen. Sir, I'm concerned about taking most of the seasoned sailors with me tomorrow. If something goes wrong and we don't make it back, you'll be left with mostly new sailors. I understand your concern. I am aware that what you propose could happen, but I think the odds are in our favor. We've seen no signs of life on the island. Aye, sir, I know you're right, but I have an uneasy feeling about this and wanted to make sure we are prepared for any contingency. I appreciate your concern, Lieutenant. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we will have an opportunity that few men have to be the first to set foot on an uncharted island. Lieutenant Christensen smiled as he left the cabin. Captain Ezekiel added an entry in the ship's log. June 12, 1675. We have anchored offshore of the uncharted island. Tomorrow, Lieutenant Christensen and a crew of 6 will land on the beach to assess any dangers. The other 43 crew members will remain on the Westerly until it is determined whether it is safe. Just as the sun hit the horizon, the landing craft was lowered into the water. Lieutenant Christensen and the crew began rowing toward shore. The rest of the crew watched them and cheered as they made their way. They could see the beach in the distance. The sun was slowly rising and the day's heat was building. The wind was calm and the water was as smooth as glass. It was a perfect day to make a beachhead. As the landing craft made slow progress toward shore, a breeze began to blow around the halfway point. The closer they got to shore, the stronger the breeze. The water became choppy and the landing craft crashed into large ocean waves. At the same time, the Westerly was hit with similar conditions. Captain Ezekiel was watching the landing craft through a handheld telescope when it suddenly engulfed in dense fog. He lost sight of them altogether. The fog stopped about 200 yards from the shore, but when the wind and the waves were worsening, Captain Ezekiel was busy trying to keep the Westerly afloat. The ship's anchor was failing to hold it in place. He could see the strain on the anchor's rope. If it failed, they would lose their anchor. "Weigh anchor!" he shouted. Captain Ezekiel barked out several orders and the crew responded quickly. They were heading toward rocks near the shore and the anchor was retrieved just in time. The crew hoisted the lower sails and steered toward deeper water. As they moved farther from the island, the storm began to subside. As a precaution, Captain Ezekiel set a course to circumnavigate the island while waiting for the lieutenant's signal. End of chapter 1.